night on this Wednesday, August 20th, 2014. I'll be your host today. We have an exciting show coming up. Besides the InfoWars reporters in Ferguson, Missouri that are going to be joining us, we're also going to be joined live in studio by Arthur Thompson. And he's the CEO of the John Birch Society. He's in the area promoting his new book called International Merger by Foreign Entanglements. That's exactly what is happening in the world. They're creating these regional trade zones, just like we saw with NAFTA, like we see with the EU, and now they're creating the Trans-Pacific Partnership, joining these regional trade agreements together. And of course, the people who are controlling this country, people like Petraeus, are saying, you know, what comes after America? Well, that's easy, North America. And he even references the North American Trade Union. So they see this as an accomplished fact, while we're just starting to realize, many of us in the public are starting to see the consequences of the North American Trade Union as we see these open borders, as people like Nancy Pelosi said, we just happen to have this border with these multiple communities that are separated by this border. The border doesn't really mean anything, essentially is what she was saying. As we see the consequences of this and start to push back against it, many people in the public who have not been following it for decades, like the John Birch Society, they're working on the next stage of this. They're working on taking these regional trading groups and merging them together. So that's the way that they come up with a globalist regime, is through these trade agreements. So I'm very anxious to talk to him about that. We also have news about a geoengineering climate engineering conference that is going on in Berlin as we speak. This week, ending tomorrow, they have a conference on how they can change the climate. Now, we've talked about chemtrails. Alex had a geoengineering special report just last week. We're going to look at a couple of the papers that are going to be presented at this conference that are being presented, one of them today. Very interesting revelation of what they're up to. We're also going to look more in depth at the Pentagon's 1033 program, the consequences of that. That's the program where they give the equipment to all these local police departments. That's what's fundamentally behind this militarization of the police. And as you're looking at this right now, we've got a article that's up on Infowars.com. This cop who's running around pointing guns in people's faces. I mean, he's like some kind of a panicked animal. They're just running around with a gun in people's faces. And when they ask him what he's doing, all he says is the F word. You know, I'm going to blow your effing head off. And when they ask him his name, he says, he basically repeats that. Very, very serious to see this kind of thing happening. This kind of unprofessional, provocative behavior. Anybody that's handled a gun knows that you don't point it at somebody you don't plan to shoot. That's a very serious thing, but that's becoming standard operating procedure right now. Where's that coming from? Well, it's being driven by these programs where they give this equipment out to people, get them all hyped up. It's kind of like when you have a homeschool. As we were doing that, we were looking at the curriculum. What were we to teach if we're going to pass the test? They can try to drive what you teach in school by setting up the test. They don't have to dictate the curriculum to you directly. They can set it up by setting some standards that you have to get your kids to follow through. That's the same thing they're doing with the police as they train them in this militarized program. One aspect that you probably don't realize is that part of the military surplus program involved giving equipment to firefighters. That was something that went on for several decades before they ever started giving it to the police departments. That went back to right after World War II. They recently tried to shut that down. There was a massive pushback against that. We're going to talk about that. And we have news about the Kardashians. That's right. Right here on InfoWars, we're going to cover some stuff about the Kardashians. They wanted to get into Plum Island, so we're going to talk about that. DARPA's got a new bid out, $150,000 if you can track the spread of chikungunya fever.
This is Alex Jones for InfoWarsLife.com. The latest in preparedness is now here. an electrically stabilized colloidal silver solution that can be added to both your home cabinet and preparedness pack alike. Concentrated to 30 parts per million in what has been dubbed the survival silver solution, the new InfoWars Life Silver Bullet Colloidal Silver is the answer for you and your family. And it's entirely free of toxic artificial additives that are loaded into many products. The InfoWars Life Silver Bullet Silver is so powerful that it is concentrated into a 2-ounce bottle and is not recommended for extended continual use. This is not a low-grade formula. We are working with one of the top laboratory manufacturers in the United States to bring you the best form of colloidal silver using electrical processes within a base of deionized water for your preparedness storage or your home kitchen. Purchase your bottle of InfoWarsLife.com Silver Bullet Colloidal Silver today and find other amazing supplements at InfoWarsLife.com.
Welcome to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight on this Wednesday, August 20th, 2014. We're going to be having a conversation with Arthur Thompson, the CEO of the John Birch Society. He's going to be joining us live in studio in the third hour. He's got a new book out, International Merger by Foreign Entanglements. It's exactly, as I pointed out in the last segment, what is happening. They create these regional trade groups, and now as we see the effects 20 years on into NAFTA, they're working on creating the next step, and that is to combine NAFTA, the North American Union, combine that with the European Union, and also combine the North American Union with the Asian trade groups. That's the way they're going to get a globalist control through the corporations, giving them powers that are above what government has. We've also got some breaking news about a geoengineering conference that's going on in Berlin right now. It ends tomorrow. There's going to be a couple of interesting papers we're going to go over there. Of course, Alex Jones had a geoengineering special report last week, and we're going to look at what they're up to. And actually, one of these papers, one of the scientists has a little bit of problem with what they're planning to do, or what we would say they're already doing. You know, that's the sort of thing that you see happening with the surveillance state. For many years, we told you what they were doing. They pretended they weren't doing it right up until the Snowden documents came out. Of course, the head of the NSA was saying, oh, no, we're not spying on anybody. And of course, the senator who asked him a question knew that they were. He had seen the classified documents. He knew he was lying. That's why he was trying to get him to tell the truth under oath, but they don't do that either. So what they do is they do these things. They do it secretly. When you talk about it, they say, you're a conspiracy theorist. You know, these people, Alex Jones, the John Birch Society, all these guys are just into conspiracies. We have an interesting clip that we're going to play you, too, to put things into perspective. Going back to a Larry McDonald appearance on CNN Crossfire with Pat Buchanan and Tom Braden. You may not know Tom Braden, but he was someone who was very instrumental in the creation of the CIA. He was someone who created Operation Mockingbird, and he was somebody who had a very large presence in the media. So it was an interesting three-way conversation there between those guys just before Larry McDonald, who was a congressman and also a past president of the John Birch Society. We're going to play some excerpts of that when we talk to Arthur Thompson. We're also going to be going to our InfoWars reporters in Ferguson, Missouri. We're going to look more in depth at this Pentagon 1033 program, which is militarizing our local police departments. You know, that was something else that the John Birch Society for years talked about decades ago. They were talking about local control of the police and how important it was that that not turn into federal control. Well, now it's actually moving beyond that. We've got the UN talking about how they want to essentially set up standards for the way the police are going to interact with people. I think they need to be controlled locally. We need to find some method to control the police. Frankly, I think with the federal involvement, they have gone out of control. So we're going to look at that program, and there's something that I don't think many of you have heard about. It's something that was only covered by local stations when it first came out. Back in June, the Pentagon momentarily said that they were going to stop a program of giving military surplus hardware to fire departments. This is a program that had been in effect since the 1950s, shortly after World War II ended, and they started bringing back surplus equipment. They started giving it to fire departments a long time before they started giving it to police departments. They didn't start the police program until the mid-90s. So for 40 years, they were giving surplus equipment to small fire departments, rural fire departments that had to deal with massive wildfires but had a very small population base, could not afford to get this equipment. It was a very useful, very productive thing to do with that equipment. They decided they were going to stop that abruptly at the end of June. There was a major backlash because, you know, firemen don't take things sitting down. They get very active about things. So they got in touch with their congressmen, with their senators. They pushed that back. But for about 3 weeks, people were talking about this program, how it had existed, how necessary and vital it was, how so many of the fires were put out by local people. But the Pentagon wants to militarize the police and do it so quickly that they even wanted to cut this little bit of equipment that they were giving to fire stations. So we're going to talk about that, what's in that program. And we also have Kardashian news. They tried to get onto Plum Island, and they were told, no, sorry, it's kind of secretive here. We're also going to talk about a new DARPA contract putting an award out, $150,000 for people who can predict how the chikungunya fever is going to move across the United States. They want to track this as they would track a pandemic. Anytime DARPA gets involved in something, you need to watch it carefully. So we're going to talk about the new chikungunya vaccine. It's a new mechanism. It's a very different way that they've got of trying to control the disease, and it also applies to the new Ebola vaccine. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about Plum Island. We're going to talk about some diseases that are put out by tick-borne that tick vector to put this out. So we've got some interesting news on that front. But the top story is what's going on in Ferguson right now. And Alex is going to be joining us in a few minutes to talk about this, because last night our reporters got some amazing footage. We have an article up on InfoWars right now about a Ferguson cop who is pointing a gun at journalists and saying, "I'm going to kill you." He's pointing the gun right in their face. And he keeps doing this, and he's just kind of walking around the crowd. If you're watching us, you can see the B-roll there. I don't know how much of this we can play, guys. Can we play some of this, or is it all profanity?
It's all there's too much profanity.
Okay, we're going to have a bloop version for you. But right now, I'll give you the gist of it if you're listening on the radio. This is Paul Joseph Watson's article. He said, shocking footage out of Ferguson, Missouri shows a police officer pointing his gun directly at protesters and the press while remarking, "I'm going to effing kill you." And the journalist says, oh, he's got his gun raised, and Joe Biggs was standing right there and said, his gun is pointed. And the journalist says, "My hands are up, bro, my hands are up." And the cop says, "I'm going to effing kill you, get back, get back." He goes, "You're going to kill him?" says another individual. "Did he just threaten to kill me?" And then when they ask the cop for his name, he says, "Go F yourself." And so that's now become a hashtag on Twitter. Hashtag officer go F yourself. They spell it out. And we've got a couple of tweets here from Joe Biggs. He said, "I witnessed a cop stick his M4 in a journalist's face and say, 'I'll effing kill you.' A female officer had to pull him out of the young man's face." Mikhail Thalen tweeted that he had 3 riot cops freaking out and pointing shotguns at him when he got isolated behind a building after everything started happening. Well, this is something that is very new. I can remember... it's probably been about 6 years ago when we adopted my daughter from China. And when we were it was a massive, crowded retail street. I mean, it was totally packed. And you can't imagine it unless you've been to China or, let's say, New York on St. Patrick's Day parade. I mean, it's that kind of a crowd. Shoulder to shoulder, everybody is packed. They pulled up in an armored vehicle, and this security guard gets out. He's got armor. He's got a helmet, kind of like what you see the police wearing now, and a shotgun. And he levels the shotgun. He doesn't have the muzzle up. He doesn't have the muzzle down. He points it at the crowd, a shotgun. And we were right there. And I could not believe they would be that irresponsible. I said, I've never seen anything like this. And, of course, that is what's become standard operating procedure for our police now. That's been happening all week. Joining us now is Alex Jones to comment on this. Alex.
That's right, David. As I announced yesterday in the third hour on air, I've gotten so upset by all of this that when I start having literal anger issues, that's not fake on air when I'm blowing up, folks. That's going on behind the scenes as well, because I'm so upset that I decided to just take a day off and get a lot of different errands and issues completed. They're more administrative around the office and the house. And then the reason I raise this personal point is it shows how serious all of this is, that never in almost 20 years on air never have I had to actually just take myself off air. Even though I wasn't making that big of a fool of myself on air, I was just getting so physically upset and disgusted that there's no point in just getting on air and venting a bunch of anger. And the lesson out of that is I'm on one extreme getting so angry about things. Other people are on the other extreme, not caring or thinking they don't have any power. And then I watched the live streams last night. This is not a fake reality TV show. This is the real world and the end of our country basically collapsing. We're going to skip this network break, and I'm going to be gone by the bottom of the hour and turn it over to David Knight. But the reason I preface all of this with my own personal feelings on the subject is this is how a country dies. This is how tyranny comes in, by increment, by successive approximation. And then finally, they're not taking baby steps. They're not taking giant leaps. They are jumping light years ahead in destroying our republic right in front of us. And the police, the looters, the demonstrators, the media, the American people, we're all being manipulated by very sophisticated psyops. So I wanted to take off today so that last night and this morning I could really just sit back, read the news, take my time trying to figure out what's going on exactly, and to really try to gauge the larger situation. And stepping back and watching the HD reports filed at Infowars.com and that are on the YouTube channel and on PrisonPlanet.tv, it is just so over the top, incredible, the picture that has emerged clearly now, several weeks into this Ferguson crisis. The feds have been there since day one. The feds are undoubtedly manipulating this through CNN, MSNBC, the new Black Panther Party useful idiots, and the Ford Foundation type operatives that are on the ground there. We're going to get into some shocking evidence of that here in just a moment. The police are clearly being given orders to brutalize the press and to treat the press with hatred and to assault the press and to threaten to kill the press. In fact, I may just have to order the reporters back because they've got a lot of courage and they keep going up to the very front lines where reporters are being arrested left and right in front of them and brutalized for no reason. Our guys are now there standing there shooting HD video as the cop sticks the M4, M16 variant to the chest of reporters and points it at them as well and says, "I will effing kill you," with an arrogant, belligerent, that doesn't have a mask on, anything. No one's arguing with him. No one's telling him he's a piece of crap. No one is antagonizing him. They are targeting the press. And in the Joe Biggs video that Marcos Morales uploaded in the middle of the night last night, police arresting journalists in Ferguson, Missouri. That's the headline. And I sat here this morning watching it. I cannot figure out a way to describe what is in this 5-minute video. This video, and there's a whole bunch of them, I can't quit watching them. Because as an investigator, as somebody that's been doing this for 20 years that knows how provocateurs work, who's gone up against them scores of times, I've had the Army try to set fires in Florida and blame it on me. I have been chased through swamps by dune buggies. I mean, I'm just telling people that's in police state too. I've dealt with this over and over again. I've dealt with this trying to build a memorial church in Waco. I've dealt with the Klan threatening to kill me and finding out they're federal agents and informants. So when I tell people something, I'm going off experience. We saw the feds dressed up like anarchists, also running anarchists under them in Seattle in '99 at WTO. We've caught them in Ottawa, Canada. At the G20. We've caught them in Pittsburgh. It is so criminal to watch the police run a false flag. I've now analyzed these videos, and in the same video that's on the YouTube channel, I don't even think we've got it on the website yet, titled Police Arresting Journalists in Ferguson, I cannot even come up with a proper headline for this video because the guys are filing this report, and it's narrated by Biggs, but they just glaze over the cop pointing a gun at him and threatening to kill him. And I'm not saying that's bad they glaze over it. They glaze over all these other reporters being brutalized and attacked. And then right there, Biggs clearly completed the mission and discovered a cache of Molotov cocktails deployed in an area strategically, and I've seen this over and over again, by the feds, guaranteed. He goes to all the police, tells them where it's at, they look at him, and then are clearly in the know and say, get out of here and do nothing. And then you see the press conference and the gun and the same Molotov cocktail that they had in the press conference 2 nights ago. I'm here to tell you, looking at these videos, the evidence is all there. We now know this may have been staged from the very beginning. This whole thing is a psyop, just like the IS terrorists chopping the U.S. reporter's head off. That's a real reporter. That's probably a real beheading. ISIS is real. IS is real. It's called Al-Qaeda in Iraq. It was allowed and armed by our filthy, degenerate, wicked, globalist occupied government to attack Syria, and they're on the news this morning separately. I mean, we're just living a psyop, saying we've got to go back into Syria. IS is using eastern Syria to go into western Iraq when our government set them up and turned them loose. It's like throwing a baby with cuts on its back into a pool of starving piranhas and then saying, oh my God, we've got to do something for the baby. I mean, you can see the problem reaction solution. And just like the cops have been caught under Fed control in every major event provocateuring to give them the fake moral high ground, there's that famous video from 5 years ago where the government even did an investigation. The RCMP had to admit that they did it. They had huge, cops in anarchist garb beating up other cops, and you could tell that it was about 95% fake. They were actually hitting them pretty hard. But the cops were winking, and they were all wearing the same boots, and they got caught. That was in the Toronto Star. You got caught. They did provocateuring at the G20 in London, and then a guy delivering newspapers and chewing gum to the corner store showed him his ID, said, no, I'm delivering food into the conference area, into one of the gift shops, and they just beat his brains out in front of everybody, and then said that he had assaulted the police until a video got released, and they just beat his brains out in cold-blooded murder. And so what you've got is cold-blooded murderers being hired for the police departments, cold-blooded bullies, and unstable mental patients who basically shouldn't have a job pushing a mop, are being put in and promoted to create this culture now of a full conversion of the police into a vicious, hateful, occupying army who are targeting the media on purpose. Now, folks, we can keep more than one thought in our minds at the same time. We can chew bubble gum and trim the hedges or walk and chew bubble gum. It doesn't mean the thugs are good. It doesn't mean the looters are good. We're there exposing them and reporting on them throwing rocks at the police, and they're not being arrested when they do it. We have video of them throwing rocks at police. I'm going to explain this. In the same area, they're brutalizing journalists and targeting them with a hatred as if journalists are all convicted child molesters. The journalists are professional in almost every case while they're being assaulted by out-of-control police attacking the First Amendment, attacking all of our freedoms. This is vomitous. Then you expand it from that to people throwing bricks at the police, and the cops stand there like they're ready for it and just let it bounce off their body armor. And then you got Molotov cocktails cached right over by an area by the police. Biggs discovers them, goes to them, and the cops look like they have an adrenaline rush, like they've just been caught in something. So they're clearly working with the new Black Panther people to stir things up. They are clearly working with other Justice Department provocateurs that are on the ground. I don't think the police themselves are involved, but they know. They're not stupid. This is disgusting. And this whole Ferguson thing is a laboratory to shoot HD video and reports to train departments all over the country. The feds do the training. They send in the armored vehicles. They give the state the money. They give them the Army manuals to point guns at people and to shoot protesters in the future lethally to stop peaceful protesters as a psyop. That's in the new Army manual. This is all earth-shaking. Of course they'll throw Molotov cocktails at themselves to stir this up and to give the police state the moral high ground. If they'll have official manuals April of this year, released last Friday, saying they will kill in a crowd of peaceful demonstrators. They will shoot for the chest, the testicles, the spine, the heart, depending on if they want to wound someone to scare the crowd or if they want to kill. And it gives authorization, not in law, but in doctrine, to murder Americans en masse. And they will do this when the collapse comes and when cities are burning. It will be legitimate when the military goes out there and mows down looters. But remember who lit the fuse. Remember who started the whole thing, to where they will make us, the middle class, beg for martial law, beg them to save us. And when the police fail and when they fall, then they're going to bring in the UN troops. And I was told this by FBI agents and Army generals and Air Force generals, and I was told this by CIA people, all told me the same thing from the time that I was a little kid right up until my 19 years on air, talking to these people on air, Marine Corps colonels, you name it, you've heard them all. And I'm telling you, I was a little kid listening to FBI people my family knew, and John Birchers my family knew, and people that worked in secret operations, some of my family, all knew about this and said this was the plan of the globalists to bring America down. And folks, we are actually beginning to see it right now unfold in front of everyone's face. Now, if they fail, if we expose this and they back off, that's good. People say, oh, where's the martial law? You're seeing martial law beta tested when they are targeting reporters. We now have it on video while people throw rocks at the cops. Okay, I'm going to explain that again. They are clearly being told to stand down while this goes on. I'm going to come back and finish up and then throw the baton to David Knight. The reporters are coming up in the next hour. But we've got to go over all these videos and name these. And I'm not knocking the crew for not giving it a powerful name. I don't know how you come up with something powerful enough to describe what's on this video. Evidence of provocateuring, the police threatening to kill people. We'll play that clip when we come back. Threatening to shoot journalists, threatening to murder them. I will, quote, kill you.
Alex Jones here for Infowars.com. We're going to be intensifying our efforts to awaken free humanity to the scourge of the globalist in the month of July. And starting this July 4th, we are going to slash prices in a celebration of true Americana, the Bill of Rights, the Constitution, and the Declaration of Independence on all of the Made in America products that you will find at madein1776.com or InfoWarsStore.com. We're talking about Made in America belt buckles in brass and nickeled brass that state it loud and proud. Molon Labe. That's why we have the best-selling Made in America men's and women's Molon Labe Infowars.com shirts. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a win-win. You vote with your dollars. You support the most hardcore organization out there for promoting true ideas of libertarianism, constitutionalism, basic human empowerment. But more importantly, you get T-shirts and belt buckles so you can meet like-minded people. So you have a conversation starter with friends and family and coworkers. We are reaching out to each other. And you also throw it in the face of the anti-gunners and the rest of the parasites out there that you're a free man and woman, and that you're not going to be a slave, that you're not going to be intimidated to shut up by their tyranny that they call political correctness. That's why in the month of July, we have got giant specials on everything at madein1776.com. But to expand the InfoWar, we're offering the biggest special in the history, 13 years of PrisonPlanet.tv, our multimedia platform. We're offering the equivalent of more than 5 months free right now when you get a membership at PrisonPlanet.tv, and you get 11 memberships that can be used with the same username and passcode so you can share it with friends and family. Now is the time to fund the war bonds. Now is the time to fund the info war. Now is the time to get aggressive. Now is the time to double down. Now is the time to realize you are the people that made the info war so successful and one of the leading lights worldwide against tyranny. You don't stand behind us. You stand right beside us. And I salute all of you on this July 4th, 2014, and going forward in the month of July and onward. This is about freedom worldwide and that desire for human dignity and self-determination that beats in the human breast. We are brothers and sisters together in the true spirit of liberty and the animating contest of liberty. And so I quote in closing the great Thomas Jefferson that I have sworn on the altar of God resistance against every form of tyranny. And never forget, if you are watching or listening to this transmission, you are the resistance.